Hi, I'm Elizabeth. At 7 months pregnant, my sister looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Look at you now, it's disgusting." That wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was how the rest of the room laughed, and how my own mother texted her congratulations while ignoring I'd even shown up. They told everyone I was unstable, too sensitive. They erased me from family photos, used my name to commit fraud, and celebrated on stages I built with my bare hands. But what do you do when the people meant to love you are the first to erase you? Would you still call them family? Or finally start calling them out? They called it a surprise, but it felt more like a setup. No one came to pick me up. Not my mother, not Callista, not even one of the cousins who had texted me weeks ago saying they couldn't wait to spoil the baby mama. So I drove myself, 7 months pregnant, with my back aching from a long work week and my hands swollen to the point that my rings sat in a dish by my sink. The party was held in one of those downtown event spaces that looked better on Instagram than in person. White brick walls, fake eucalyptus garlands, little signs that read, "A little pumpkin is on the way." I walked in, 32 minutes late, clutching my small gift bag for decorum, and not a single person looked surprised to see me. They smiled like I was just another guest, not the reason for the gathering. There was no welcome hug. No one took my coat. A woman I didn't recognize shoved a mini cupcake in my hand and said, "Oh, you made it," as if I'd been invited to someone else's party. And then, of course, there was Callista. She strutted toward me in heels too high for common sense, grinning like she'd just secured another brand deal. Her blonde hair was curled, makeup flawless, dress designer. I looked like I'd just crawled out of a tax appointment. She held out a glossy pink box, wrapped with a black ribbon, already pulling at the knot before I could touch it. "We all thought this would be better than what you were wearing," she announced to the room. People turned, phones angled, someone chuckled. Inside the box was a dress, an off-brand maternity monstrosity with ruffles in all the wrong places. I froze. I didn't know whether to be grateful or offended. Callista tilted her head and smiled wider, that thin smile she used when she was twisting the knife. "You should change now," she said. "The lighting's better early afternoon." I changed. Of course I did. In a cramped bathroom that smelled like lemon-scented bleach, I swapped out my sensible stretch dress for the frilly hand-me-down they'd clearly picked for a laugh. The tag was missing. The hem was uneven. The back zipper stuck halfway. I stared at myself in the mirror, already sweating, already shrinking. When I came out, Callista clapped. "Look at you now, it's disgusting," she said, laughing. The room laughed too. Even the aunt who used to bring me coloring books. Even the cousin I helped pass her GED. Everyone laughed. It wasn't until the third laugh that I noticed Callista's phone on a tripod near the dessert table. The blinking red dot on the screen. She was live streaming. I was being broadcast to hundreds of strangers, standing in a badly lit venue in a dress that didn't fit, being laughed at for growing a life inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run, but I couldn't. I was too pregnant to bolt, too stunned to move, too tired to make a scene. Instead, I smiled. I walked to the punch table, poured myself a cup, and sipped it like the moment hadn't just sliced me open. Then I slipped away. In the bathroom again, I sat on the toilet seat and focused on my breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I counted the tiles on the wall. 12 across, 9 down. Grout chipped in the corner. I told myself not to cry. But it wasn't the dress, or the camera. It was the history. Callista had always been the chosen one. The golden child. The one Mom bragged about at church. I was the bookish one, the independent one, code for the one who doesn't need our attention. I hadn't needed it, until now. And they gave it anyway, to her. I scrolled my phone absent-mindedly, maybe to ground myself, maybe to pretend I had someone to text. That's when the message popped up. "Mom, so proud of Callista today. She really knows how to throw a party." No mention of me. Not a single word asking if I made it, if I was okay, if the baby was kicking. Just more praise for Callista, the family's PR princess. I stared at the screen, the blinking cursor beneath it. They didn't just forget me. They replaced me. And I was still breathing. Eventually, I stood up, smoothed the dress, checked my face for mascara streaks. Then I walked back out. Callista was posing near the balloon arch with some college friend I hadn't seen in years. The music had gotten louder. A new wave of guests was arriving. I waited until there was a lull in the crowd, then walked straight toward them. "Can someone take a picture of us?" I asked. Callista blinked, confused. "Sure," her friend said, holding out a phone. We stood shoulder to shoulder. Her smile was wide. Mine was quiet. The camera flashed. In that moment, I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was collecting. Let them post the picture. Let them frame it like a moment of sisterhood. Let them write fake captions. That image? It wasn't a keepsake. It was evidence. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. Turned off the lights, turned on the fan, even pulled the blackout curtains like that would keep the memory out. But my mind ran in circles, rerunning the moment the camera flash went off and wondering how many people had already seen it online. By morning, my phone had confirmed it. The notifications were endless. Comments under the video, tagged photos, filtered reels. Strangers I'd never met had opinions about my swollen ankles, the ugly dress, and how I looked ungrateful during my own party. I scrolled through them with numb fingers, letting each word sink in like stones dropped into a pond. I didn't cry. I didn't react. I just watched as the world mocked me in real time. One text came from a college friend I hadn't heard from in years. "You okay? That live stream was rough." I didn't respond. I stood in the bathroom, looking at my reflection, and thought, they always knew how to make me disappear. Now they're doing it digitally, too. By noon, I needed a break from the noise. I shuffled around the apartment, pretending to clean, but mostly just opening drawers. Looking for something. Comfort, distraction, maybe a memory that didn't hurt. I found the old photo album buried under a pile of wrapping paper I hadn't thrown out from last Christmas. I sat on the floor and opened it, knowing better, but needing to see it again. Callista, front and center. Every birthday, every Easter Sunday, every family trip. There she was, glowing. In the middle. Held, hugged, highlighted. Me? I was the blurry shape near the edge of the frame. Half a smile behind a taller cousin. A shadow in the corner while Mom kissed Callista's cheek. In one photo, my face had been physically cut off, only the back of my head visible. The deeper I went, the more obvious it became. I wasn't just left out, I was edited out. Eventually, I stopped flipping pages. Closed the book. My fingers itched for something real. I opened the closet and dug out an old hard drive, one Bernard had given me years ago to back up my college work. I plugged it in, and there it was. A folder labeled Christmas 1998. I clicked it open. The video was grainy, the kind of handheld camcorder quality that made everyone look like ghosts. The room was filled with wrapping paper and plastic toys, kids screaming, adults laughing. And then I heard her. "Elizabeth, move a little to the left," Mom said off camera. No, just step out. Let Callista stand in the center." I was 7. In the video, I obeyed. Quiet, willing. Callista stepped into the center and beamed like she'd been waiting for her cue. The rest of the family adjusted, gathered around her. I was gone. It wasn't just about pictures. It was about presence. I closed the file and sat back, letting the silence stretch. I wasn't sad. I was hollow, like I'd run out of room to hurt. A few hours passed. I made tea I didn't drink, checked my email. Then I did something I'd never done before. I started organizing evidence. I uploaded the live stream from yesterday to a private folder and titled it Case 1 Emotional Defamation. Then I made another. Physical Neglect, Early Signs. In it, I saved the Christmas video. A few screenshots of the photo album. The text from Mom. I wasn't just collecting moments anymore. I was building a timeline, a pattern, a story that made sense. That's when I remembered high school, senior year, prom night. Callista had just won prom queen, another crown, another spotlight. I'd come home late after working a shift at the bookstore and found Mom crying in the kitchen. Not because something was wrong, but because she was just so proud. I congratulated Callista, said she looked beautiful. Mom looked at me and smiled thinly. "You're smart, honey. Not everything's about looks." The message was clear. I wasn't Callista, and I never would be. Back then, I didn't know how much that sentence would shape me. But now I could see it for what it was. A box. A role. A lifetime of being told what I wasn't, until I stopped wondering what I could be. Later that night, I backed up everything on a flash drive, then another. I labeled them carefully, tucked one in my purse, hid the other in the back of my sock drawer. This wasn't just emotional housekeeping. This was preparation. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing protection. As I shut down my laptop, a ping broke the stillness. A text. From Mom. "Can we talk? Your sister's upset." I didn't open it. Didn't type a word. Instead, I reached for the folder with my medical files and flipped to the latest OB/GYN report. My blood pressure had been flagged. Stress-related, they said. I placed the report into the folder labeled Health, Impact. And then I whispered to no one. This time, I'm documenting everything. The hardest part of silence isn't the quiet, it's the questions it leaves behind. I hadn't said a word in the family group chat since the baby shower. Not a comment. Not a heart emoji. Not a single reply to the sea of curated photos and performative captions that followed. Instead, I stayed still, kept the lights low, and spent my nights organizing files like I was preparing for trial. My apartment had taken on a sterile energy, neat, quiet, tense. It didn't feel like home. It felt like holding my breath. Wednesday night, just past 11, I was staring at the glow of my laptop when my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen. The ringtone was enough. Only one person still used the default Apple ring. Callista. I let it buzz twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. "Wow," she said before I could speak. "Took you long enough?" Her voice had that tone, cheerful on the surface, razor sharp underneath. I didn't respond. "I just thought," she went on, "maybe you'd want to clear the air. After all, you made quite the impression online. You looked insane, by the way. That dress? Who told you mustard yellow was your color?" Still, I said nothing. Just reached for my voice memo app and hit record. "You embarrassed yourself, not me," she added. "You always do. Honestly, you've always been the ugly one. I was just the first one to say it out loud." I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I just listened. She kept going. "You think people feel sorry for you because you're waddling around with a baby bump? Please. You got knocked up and now you want sympathy?" I placed the phone down on speaker and stared out the window while her voice filled the room. It was strange how detached I felt, as if I were listening to a stranger talk about someone else entirely. "You're a joke, Elizabeth," she finished. "No one takes you seriously. They never have." She hung up before I could say anything. Not that I'd planned to. The next morning, I called Mom. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to believe she hadn't heard the things Callista said. Maybe I thought, after everything, she'd at least pretend to be appalled. She picked up on the second ring. "I just got out of the shower," she said, "like we spoke every day." "Mom," I began carefully. "Callista called me last night. She said some things that—" "Oh, sweetheart," she cut in, voice warm but distant. "You know how your sister gets when she's overwhelmed. She didn't mean it. She said I was always the ugly one," I replied flatly. There was a pause. "She's under stress," Mom said, like that explained everything. "You've always been the sensitive one, Elizabeth." And there it was. The cement pour over my chest. Not shock, not even disappointment, just confirmation. I didn't reply, just let the line go dead. Back at my desk, I opened my journal app and typed, "I am not sensitive. I'm surrounded by people who refuse to be accountable." Then I created a new folder on my drive. Audio evidence, verbal abuse. I uploaded the recording, Date, time, transcript in progress. This wasn't about rage anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. That night, before bed, I brushed my teeth with more pressure than necessary. Every movement had become purposeful. I was rebuilding, quietly, deliberately. Just as I climbed into bed, my phone lit up again. A voice memo from Callista. I hit play. You better get over this. You'll need us once the baby comes. I stared at the screen for a long second, then tapped the mic icon and said, not if the law gets there first. Then I opened a new tab, drafted an email to Adrienne, my lawyer, attached the audio file, and clicked send. The reply from Adrienne was short and surgical. Got it. We'll move forward on documentation. Keep logging everything. That morning, I woke up with a stiffness that wasn't just physical. Something had shifted. The quiet rage I'd been bottling for months had finally found a shape. I wasn't planning to scream or confront anyone in the middle of a party. No, I was building a paper wall between me and the chaos. And this time, they weren't climbing over it. I powered up my laptop and plugged in the external drive I'd labeled Family Legal. It clicked softly, like it understood the weight of what was coming. One by one, I began sorting the files. Screenshots of texts, saved live streams, old photos, voice recordings. Each folder got a name, emotionally sterile, like a legal file. Verbal discreditation, public humiliation, emotional isolation. I backed up everything twice. Then I started writing summaries. Each incident got a title, a timestamp, a note on context. It wasn't petty, it was protection. Because if they were going to act like I was overreacting, I'd show them how much they'd taught me to stay silent. At 10:17 a.m., Callista messaged me. Just a reminder, please don't come to the opening next week. I'd rather avoid awkwardness. No greeting, no context, just that. I stared at it for a long moment, then took a screenshot and dragged it into the folder. For someone who loved appearances, she had no idea how unpolished she sounded in print. I didn't reply. Not immediately. Instead, I opened another folder labeled Before the Lie and found the photo of us in front of her first restaurant, still under construction, both of us in paint-splattered jeans. I'd spent 3 months helping her design the layout, sketching it all on grid paper I bought with my own paycheck. I had the original notes, the emails with contractors, the proof. I remembered her saying, "We're in this together." That same night, she posted a video to Instagram Live. "I built this from scratch," she said into the camera, face glowing. "This dream, this restaurant, it's all me." I watched it twice. "You mean from me?" I whispered under my breath. The next morning, I printed off the contracts from my Gmail, scanned PDFs of renovation agreements where my name sat next to hers. I highlighted my role in yellow. I started drafting a timeline for Adrienne, listing each contribution I made with supporting documents attached. I wasn't just telling a story, I was filing one. I also recorded voice memos, explaining each document out loud, how I came up with the open kitchen layout, why I chose reclaimed wood for the counters. I saved each file with a date and timestamp and backed them up in a folder marked Backup. That evening, I finally replied to Callista's message. "Don't worry," I wrote. "I have no plans to embarrass the brand, but I do plan to protect my name." She saw it, no response, which was fine. I wasn't writing for her anymore. That night, I walked down to the apartment mailbox after dinner. The sky had gone that flat, pale gray Raleigh gets in late October, when even the clouds seem tired. Inside my mailbox was a thick, unmarked envelope. No return address. I carried it back upstairs and opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a flyer, her grand opening poster. Callista's face dominated the layout, smiling wide, standing in front of a restaurant sketch I recognized instantly. It was mine. The watermark had been cropped out, but the sketch style, the proportions, the layout, I had drawn that on my living room floor, with my back aching and my ankles swollen. I flipped the flyer over, and in black ink, someone had written, "She took more than credit. Check page 2. My hands were trembling when I reached inside the envelope again. Page 2 was a copy of a licensing agreement I didn't recognize. Callista's name was on it, twice. Mine wasn't anywhere. At the bottom, in red ink, effective date, March 12th. That was the same week she told me she was going solo and streamlining paperwork. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was theft. I sat there at the table, paper in one hand, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. Not from panic, no, that part had already passed. This was the kind of cold fury that didn't shake. It settled deep, slow, methodical. I read through the licensing agreement again, line by line, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. My name was nowhere on it. The restaurant concept I had poured myself into had been stripped from me, documented and repackaged under her name. And there it was, in black and white. March 12th. The day she told me she needed space to streamline. The day she hugged me outside the coffee shop, said she'd always be grateful for my help, and then walked away with my plans in her purse. I scanned the flyer again. Under the fancy calligraphy and filtered photo, my sketch was visible, barely altered, like she hadn't even bothered to mask it. It wasn't a tribute, it was theft, bold and public. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop. There was a news alert pinned at the top of the local feed. Entrepreneur Callista Monroe set to open second concept location. I clicked it. The headline was bad enough, but the quote in the body of the article made my jaw lock. This entire concept was my brainchild. I built this from my own blood, sweat, and vision. I copied the link, saved the screenshot, logged the date and outlet. Then, I grabbed my keys and drove down to the Wake County Public Records Office. I didn't call ahead. I didn't need an appointment. I needed answers. The building smelled like paper and old printer toner. The clerk at the front desk was polite enough, pointed me to the records kiosk. I searched my name, then Callista's, then the address of the restaurant. And there it was. The original lease, with my name on it. And then, 6 months later, an amendment, filed by Callista, stating an operational transfer for convenience. Convenient for whom? I printed both copies and stapled them together, adding them to the manila folder I'd started that morning. When I got home, social media was already buzzing. Callista had posted a behind-the-scenes reel of the restaurant build, narrating over time-lapse video like she was the one lifting drywall. I turned up the volume. I've always been a solo builder, just me and my grit. I laughed, not out loud, just in my head, where the betrayal stung the hardest. I opened my email and wrote to the journalist who published the article. No rants, just facts. I attached the original design plans, dated emails, my lease, and a brief statement asking for correction. Then I forwarded everything to Adrian. Subject, misrepresentation and IP violation, Monroe Body. How fast can we file for misrepresentation of ownership and IP theft? Her reply came back 6 minutes later. Faster than she can go live. I smiled, just a little, then pulled out the 3-ring binder I'd kept since college, emptied out the old class notes, and replaced them with every piece of evidence I had. I added labeled dividers, sticky tabs, and a table of contents. I printed everything in triplicate. After dinner, I typed one last thing. A letter. To Callista. You can own a building, but not my name, not anymore. I printed it, folded it carefully, and slid it into a legal-size envelope along with a copy of the cease and desist notice Adrian had drawn up. I walked it to the mailbox myself and watched the flag go up. At 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. This is going to cost you more than money. I stared at it, not surprised, not rattled. Then I typed, then it's a fair price for truth. I locked my screen, closed my laptop, and turned off the light. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled without shaking. Morning came slowly, like the sky was unsure it wanted to brighten. I sat on the couch with a lukewarm cup of tea in my hand, staring at the message from the night before. I didn't need to save it. It was already burned into my brain. Still, I screenshotted it, added it to the threats and harassment folder, and backed up my drive one more time. That day, I took off work. No calls, no meetings, just one task. Clarity. I pulled out the manila folder I'd labeled pre-build files and found the original agreement Bernard and I had drawn up the year before last. It was dated, notarized, and buried in the middle of a pile of personal tax forms, because even when you plan, you never think you'll need it like this. At the bottom of the document, in Bernard's careful handwriting, was his signature and a short line in blue ink. Protect her vision if she won't. He knew. Even back then, he knew I was the type to downplay my worth and let louder people take credit. I hadn't understood what he meant at the time. I did now. By noon, I had a virtual meeting scheduled with Adrienne. She was already reviewing the property transfer and licensing documents. Her expression was tight, professional, but not cold. "You have what we need," she said. "They committed misrepresentation. We're moving forward." I nodded. "What's the first step?" "We send a cease and desist immediately, then we prepare for an IP theft case." "And Callista?" Adrienne didn't blink. "She'll know we mean business by Monday." After the call, I printed the key files, hole-punched them, and placed them in a fresh binder labeled The Build. That night, I dropped the packet into a FedEx envelope, along with a copy of the legal notice Adrienne drafted. The clerk behind the counter asked if I wanted overnight delivery. I said yes. As I turned to leave, he said, "You know, that's one of the thickest envelopes I've seen this week." "Family stuff," I said. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Back home, I posted nothing, said nothing. But I felt it, the shift. Something had solidified. I wasn't just fighting for what I had built. I was reclaiming who I was in the process. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. This time, the message was shorter. Colder. "You made your move. So will we." I didn't reply. I didn't even react. Instead, I shut the bathroom light off, walked into the kitchen, and opened the junk drawer. Inside was the letter Bernard had left me the last time we saw each other. I hadn't read it in months. I still didn't. But I held it. Just held it. Because the man who saw my worth when no one else did had written something for a future version of me who wouldn't shrink anymore. A knock on the door broke my focus. I checked the peephole. Nothing but an envelope on the floor. I opened it slowly. No name, no return address. Inside was a photo of Callista standing in front of the restaurant, mid-laugh. On the back, someone had written, "Check page 3 of the licensing agreement, buried clause." I grabbed the packet, flipped to page 3, and there it was. A clause that granted Callista full creative rights and sole public credit upon execution, effective once the property changed operational hands. It wasn't just a mistake. It was premeditated. A message from the same number arrived within minutes. "You should have let it go." I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and typed. "I'm not letting go. I'm filing." By Monday morning, I had the envelope and photo scanned, labeled, and filed. The legal binder now sat next to my laptop like a second spine. Heavier, but just as vital. I wasn't sleeping much, but I wasn't restless either. The tired had a direction now. It wasn't spiraling. It was stacking. Tyler texted me around 9:15. "Coffee?" I met him at a downtown spot near his new job. He looked the same, worn ball cap, jacket that didn't quite fit, eyes that had seen too much for 35. But this time, he didn't sit across from me like a friend. He sat like someone holding something heavy. "I didn't send this earlier because," he exhaled, "because I thought she'd calm down, or back off, or at least remember you're her sister." He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, printed emails. One from Callista's account, time-stamped 6 months ago, addressed to her accountant. Subject line, tax filing strategy. Need burner name. The body read, use Elizabeth M. She'll never catch it. She's too busy being pregnant and dramatic. Another email to a PR firm. Keep the charity tie-in but remove Liz's name from the founder list. Her presence muddies the story. But it was the letter that gutted me. Typed, formatted like a whistleblower document. Signed Elizabeth M. and sent directly to the IRS. Accusing me of failing to disclose property earnings. Sent from a dummy account. I stared at it. She used my name to shield her taxes, I said flatly. Tyler nodded, quietly ashamed. She told me it was just business. Said you'd thank her someday. I didn't speak for a long time. I just stared at the paper, my fingers numb around its edge. By early afternoon, I was home, sitting cross-legged on the floor, the envelope beside me. I stared at my phone, then hit call. Mom answered on the third ring. Elizabeth, she said, like we hadn't gone weeks without speaking. Did you know? I asked. A pause. Know what? About the IRS letter, about her using my name, about the contract clause. Another pause. Then, too casually, Callista didn't mean harm. Why do you always push these things? I didn't breathe, just listened. And I really can't talk long. I'm helping her with the wine tasting Friday. She's invited the investors. That broke something, not loudly, just cleanly. Got it, I said, and hung up. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, because I was finished, with expecting different answers from the same script. Later that day, Adrian confirmed the IRS document could be used. This isn't just betrayal, she said, scanning the file. It's impersonation, fraud, if we can prove intent. I nodded. We can. I spent that night tightening the case folder, organized everything, screenshots, voice recordings, the licensing file, Tyler's testimony. I renamed the binder, Family vs. Elizabeth, Phase 2. That evening, a new invitation pinged into my inbox. Subject line, Dinner, Just Us Girls. From Mom. No apology, no explanation. I declined politely. Thanks, but I'll pass. Then I drove to a local printer and ordered a 24-inch framed canvas, the restaurant concept sketch. The original one. My handwriting, my measurements, my name in the corner. When the clerk asked, "Is this a gift?" I said, "Yes." For myself. Just after midnight, a message from Tyler. There's more. I didn't want to send it before, but you deserve the full picture. Attached was a photo from a journal. Callista's handwriting, unmistakable. No one even notices her. If she vanished, it would make things easier. I dropped my phone, and this time, I did cry. Not out of hurt, but out of clarity. This wasn't jealousy, it was elimination. I didn't sleep the night Tyler sent that journal photo. I didn't even try. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone like it was a live grenade. The line wasn't just cruel, it was surgical. No one even notices her. If she vanished, it would make things easier. She hadn't written that for show. She hadn't expected it to be seen. And that made it worse. Saturday came with gray skies and air that hinted at rain, but never delivered. Raleigh was buzzing. Social media was already flooded with photos of Callista's grand opening. Hashtags like Nas, Monroe Magic, and Built by Callista were trending in local threads. None of it surprised me. What did surprise me was the steadiness in my hands as I got dressed. Neutral sweater, black slacks, nothing flashy. I didn't need to be seen. I needed to be there. Tyler met me behind the venue around 5:45. He handed me a press badge and nodded toward a side door. "She's already on stage," he said. "You sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer. I just walked in. The place was packed. Rows of white chairs, standing room only near the back. Fairy lights strung along the ceiling, branded cocktail napkins. Even the mints in the bathroom had her initials. I stood by a column near the audio booth. Tyler joined the tech team quietly, handed over a flash drive, whispered something, and gave me a quick look. She was mid-speech. "And I just want to say thank you for believing in this dream. I built this from the ground up, alone." That was the cue. The screen behind her flickered, then blacked out. A heartbeat later, video began. It started with blueprints, my handwriting, my measurements. Then came construction clips, me sanding, painting, measuring angles, while Callista stood with a coffee, scrolling her phone. The room shifted. People leaned forward. Then audio, her voice, from my saved recordings. She's too busy being pregnant and dramatic. Nobody even notices her. If she vanished, then a scanned page. Bernard's signed agreement. Gasps. A few people turned their heads toward me, then back to the screen. Callista froze. She opened her mouth, then stumbled backward, pressing a hand to her forehead. "Oh, I'm so dizzy." She collapsed to the floor, just slow enough to catch herself on her heels. No one screamed. No one ran. A man in a blazer crouched beside her, unsure. A woman near the front whispered, "Did she just fake faint?" Tyler killed the feed. The screen faded to black. Lights flickered. Callista sat up slowly, her hand still dramatically on her chest. I think I need air," she muttered, standing too quickly, then wobbling slightly. No one clapped. No one moved. I stepped back into the shadows and slipped out the side door. No one stopped me. Outside, the air felt better, like it had cracked open and let something stale escape. As I walked back toward the street, a security guard glanced at my press badge and gave a small nod. I nodded back. In my mind, I said nothing, but the words came anyway. I didn't need them to cheer for me. I just needed them to see the truth. That night, after a long shower and 2 slices of frozen pizza, my phone pinged again. It was Tyler, photo attached, a group chat screenshot, Callista and her PR team. Chat title, Cleanup Plan, Lie First. Message from Callista. "We'll call it a deep fake. We'll say it's AI. No one trusts anything on the internet anyway." Tyler. "She's planning to say it was fake. We might need another move." I stared at it, the heat rising again. Not anger, not quite, just exhaustion at the audacity. I typed back, "Then I'll bring the witnesses." The reply to Tyler's message was short, but the resolve behind it ran deep. "Then I'll bring the witnesses." I didn't wait for his response. I just locked my phone and let the room sit in silence. By Sunday morning, news of the event had made its way into every local corner of the internet. Photos from the grand opening were still up, but the comments had changed tone. Under the perfect photos of Callista's curated smile were words like fake, staged, and not adding up. A few accounts I didn't recognize had even shared clips from the live stream, moments pulled from the footage I hadn't posted. Someone had recorded it directly from the venue. The internet had eyes. More importantly, it had memory. But from Vera? Nothing, not a word, not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive, "hope you're okay," buried under a forwarded meme. For a woman who once left 4 voicemails in a single afternoon when I forgot to RSVP to Easter brunch, her silence was louder than anything else. By Monday afternoon, my phone finally buzzed. "Vera." Not a call. A message. "I saw what you did. I hope this brings you peace. You always needed attention in different ways." No apology. No mention of Callista. No reflection. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. By the 5th read, I felt nothing. Not even heat. Just a quiet, detached clarity. Some apologies are just reworded blame. I took a screenshot, saved it to my file, then deleted the message. Midday, I met Tyler at a cafe just off Glenwood. He brought his laptop and a look that said he hadn't slept much either. "My aunt saw the footage," he said as we sat down. "She cried, said it reminded her of when her sister used to push her out of family photos." I didn't say anything. "She said something that stuck," he continued. "Some families protect themselves by sacrificing their quietest member." I stirred my tea slowly, letting the words settle. "I wasn't quiet," I said finally. "I was silenced." Tyler nodded, like he knew the difference. That evening, I went home and opened my social media for the first time in days. I didn't say much, just uploaded one image, my original sketch of the restaurant layout, and wrote a single line. It was never about credit. It was about erasure. Then I put my phone down. 20 minutes later, the notifications started. Not from the usual family circle, not from the curated comments I used to get when I posted about work milestones or community events. These were different. People I didn't know. Women with usernames that hinted at exhaustion. Men with graying beards and tired eyes in their profile photos. Comments like, "I've been there. Thank you. You made me feel seen." My sister said the same thing to me once. One woman messaged me directly. "You just described my entire childhood. I thought it was just me." I replied simply, "It wasn't." As night settled in, I poured myself a glass of water and leaned back on the couch. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. But I felt something better. Unalone. Just after 10, there was a knock at the door. Not a heavy knock, just 2 quick raps. I opened it to find no one there. Just a thick manila envelope on the floor. No return address, no name. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Inside, a torn wedding photo. Callista, grinning, standing next to a man I barely recognized. Her first husband. The photo had been ripped right down the middle. Only half of his face remained. Taped to the back was a small sticky note. "You're not the only one she used." I sat back slowly, holding the photo in my lap. Another voice. Another person with a story. And just like that, it wasn't only mine anymore. The photo stayed in my lap long after the note was folded and filed. I stared at Callista's face, the half of her husband still lingering beside her like a ghost. I wondered how many others had carried stories in silence, how many envelopes like mine sat unopened in drawers across the city. I wondered what it cost each of them to hold back what needed to be said. Tuesday arrived with a new kind of storm. Not wind, not rain, but exposure. One of the local business blogs ran a headline that made me blink. "Callista's Kitchen Under Fire. Ownership in Question." They'd picked up my post. Within hours, the article had made rounds across small business forums, entrepreneur pages, and foodie blogs. The comments weren't polite. They weren't cruel either. They were angry, at lies, at PR spins, at how easily we applaud polish and ignore process. I didn't post again. I didn't need to. By afternoon, I had an email from a paralegal representing Callista's largest investor. It was short, clipped, all in caps. "Please confirm, is this your original work?" Attached was a screenshot of my sketch, the one Callista had showcased in every marketing packet. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I opened Zoom with Adrian. She looked like she hadn't slept, but she smiled when she saw me. "We ready?" "We're done hiding," I said. Together, we organized the investor packet. Every document, voice recording, signed statement, Tyler's emails, the licensing clause, the forged tip to the IRS, Bernard's notarized agreement. When we hit send, the subject line read, "In good faith, but not in silence." By Wednesday morning, I had 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't call back. I let Adrian handle it all. At 11:03 a.m., a headline broke. Investor group suspends funding to Callista Monroe, pending audit. The article was blunt. They were halting expansion, freezing the second location's lease, and requesting a full investigation into intellectual property claims. Callista declined to comment. Her team issued a vague statement about restructuring. By noon, she posted an Instagram story. It didn't last long. A photo of a white wall and a candle. Captioned, "People will try to destroy what they can't be part of." I saved it. Evidence. Then I closed my phone and walked downtown. There, behind a newly taped sign that read, "Lease Available," stood what was supposed to be her second restaurant. The lights were off. The windows empty. No chalkboard menus. No construction buzz. Just silence. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, breathed in, and let it go. She could have built something real, I said aloud, but she chose to build on theft. That evening, a certified envelope arrived with a hard knock at the door. Return address, Callista Monroe Legal Holdings. I opened it at the kitchen table, careful not to tear the corners. Inside, a counterclaim notice. Defamation. It accused me of slander, misrepresentation, damage to her reputation, loss of income. It listed screenshots, my name, the post, my signature. I read it twice. Then I reached for my phone and called Adrian. She answered on the first ring. "It's here," I said. "The counter?" "Yeah." She didn't pause. "Then let's make sure they understand the difference between truth and revenge." The defamation notice sat on my kitchen table for 3 full days before I touched it again. Not out of fear, out of principle. I needed to put it in its place, just like I had with everything else she'd weaponized. Thursday morning, my doctor called. "Your blood pressure's still high," she said, voice calm but pointed. "At this stage, I'd recommend we move your delivery forward. End of next week, at the latest." I didn't hesitate. "Schedule it." No one was listed as my emergency contact. I didn't offer one. No calls were made to family. No group chats pinged with baby emojis or countdowns. The only thing I packed that evening was a small overnight bag and the signed copy of my birth plan. No drama, no unnecessary noise. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and said aloud, "We're going to do this our way." Labor was unremarkable, at least medically. No complications, no waiting room full of anxious relatives, no name mix-ups, no misplaced charts. Just me, a competent nurse, and a female doctor who didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. Maren Bernard entered the world at 3:14 p.m. on a quiet Friday. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, wide eyes, soft hair. One tiny fist clenched as if she knew she had arrived into a fight and wasn't backing down. They placed her in my arms, and I said the only thing that came to mind. "You're already more than enough." Back home, the house was still. No balloons, no floral arrangements, no relatives asking for photos. I didn't need them. Late Saturday, my phone buzzed once, a single text from Vera. "I heard. Hope everything went safely." No exclamation mark, no name, just 5 words. I didn't reply. I looked down at Maren, who had fallen asleep, curled against my chest, and whispered, "You'll never wonder where love lives." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a black ink pen and the birth certificate. There was a blank line under name of child. I wrote, Maren Bernard. Then I signed the certificate without trembling. I didn't pause at the father section. I didn't fill it. Not out of bitterness, but because it didn't belong. Later, in the quiet of the living room, I opened my journal and wrote, "Not every mother needs her mother." That evening, I lit a single candle and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It wasn't addressed. It didn't need to be. "Callista, I forgive you. Not because you earned it, not because you asked, but because I'm done renting out space in my head to a version of you who will never apologize. I forgive you for needing to be adored. But I won't sacrifice myself for your applause anymore." I folded the paper and dropped it into the sink. Struck a match, watched the edges curl and darken. The ashes floated upward before they disappeared. 1 week passed. No countersuits, no phone calls, no sudden apologies wrapped in public statements. Just peace. And then a knock on the door. A small box sat on my porch. No label, no name. Inside, wrapped in a single layer of tissue, was a wooden frame. The photo inside was from years ago. Me and Bernard standing together at the construction site of what would become Callista's restaurant. I was mid-laugh. He was watching me. On the back of the frame was a handwritten message. "You were never invisible to me." I held Maren against my chest and closed my eyes. And finally, I believed it. I placed the frame gently on the shelf beside Marin's bassinet, the message on the back still echoing in my mind. You were never invisible to me. 3 weeks passed, long days and slow nights filled with feedings, swaddles, and the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was healing. No lawsuits, no phone calls, no new messages from lawyers or lawyers pretending to be family. Then, on a gray Thursday morning, the mail carrier rang the doorbell once and walked away. A certified envelope sat on the mat, bearing Bernard's handwriting, tight, neat, unmistakably his. The postmark was dated 10 days before he passed. I didn't open it right away. I sat on the couch with Marin resting against my chest, the weight of her enough to ground me. When I finally slid my finger beneath the flap, I already knew it would be the last gift he'd ever send. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, folded 3 times. Elizabeth, you've always stood taller than you were allowed to be. I'm sorry I didn't stop the silencing sooner. But I saw you, every day, and I always believed you'd find your voice. You don't owe anyone your silence anymore. B. I read it out loud. Marin stirred, as if she'd heard him too. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. There were no dramatic gasps, no collapsing into myself, just a smile that stretched across something long buried. I slid the letter into a small wooden box I kept on my bookshelf. The lid read, "What was true." Later that afternoon, I walked from room to room with an old moving box, filling it deliberately, not because I was leaving, but because I was choosing what stayed. Sketches I'd made in high school? Keep. Letters from Callista during our brief truce in college? Toss. Photos from family vacations where I remembered the hurt more than the heat? Gone. You can't erase history, but you can choose which pieces become legacy. That night, with the baby asleep, I stepped into the living room, holding a new photo in one hand and a hammer in the other. The wall above the sofa had been blank for months, intentionally. I hung the frame carefully, a picture of me and Marin taken on my phone last week, printed at the pharmacy down the street. Below it, I added a small plaque with words from Bernard's letter. You don't owe anyone your silence anymore. When I stepped back to look, I didn't see revenge. I saw release. I sat on the floor beside Maureen, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, her hands curled like she was still holding on to something important. She cooed, a soft sound, barely more than breath. I leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Outside the window, the first leaf of fall detached from the tree and floated to the ground, gentle, sure, unbothered by the letting go. Callista may rewrite the story again someday, but this one, this chapter, is mine.